What is up? It is Marksman, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can make progressive melodic house in the style of Frankie Wah and Cristoph, people like that, by breaking down one of my latest tracks called The Storm. It's going to be out on Sun Explosion Records. There's some really great things we can learn in this track, especially with bass lines and vocals. So just before we do that, please do remember to hit the like and subscribe button. It's right there. Just go ahead and click it. It takes you 2 seconds, but it really helps me out. Really appreciate that. I know that a lot of you that are watching aren't subscribing. Costs you nothing and it really helps me out. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so here we are in Ableton. Let's give you a little taste of this. By the way, this is the pre-mastered version. It's a progressive melodic track with a rolling bass line and the incredible voice of Maddie Hamer. Go check her out. She is really good. She is a phenomenal singer from Norway. Got a lot of time for her. Got a set of pipes on her. Much love to Maddie. Anyway, this track here it originally was going to be an instrumental, but I decided that it needed a little bit of extra spice, so that's why I reached out to Maddie. So let's just break down the individual components first before we start talking about what really makes this track its own, which is the vocals. So let's start off with the drums here. Just at this point here is a very characteristic fill that I do in a lot of my tracks and a way to introduce the drums. So if we actually listen to it just before, you'll see. So this is like our main drum groove here, right? And then this little fill here is a good way to introduce the rest of the groove, which you'll see in a second. There's that little double kick, which is quite cool, and it's also very cool if you do that, you cut out most of the rest of the other elements just so that it can emphasize that even more. But yeah, that's a little cool thing I did. That's a characteristic Marksman thing right there. So drum-wise, it's nothing too crazy going on. It's quite stripped back. We've got the kick, like tom groove here, some snares, some hats, some top loops. Nothing too crazy, really. Let's talk about the bass line. So there is a rolling bass line. So there's two components. There is this bass line. The chord progression is a 6-4-1-7, so it's not focused around the root note. The root note comes third in the progression, which gives it that sense that the track is constantly moving, which it is, and of course the rolling bass line helps to give it that movement, but it just feels like we're not really, I guess, at home for that often. And because the song is about, I'll be completely honest with you, the song's about a crazy ex who I met up with once, and I was just like, damn, you are still really crazy. Met up with her again about 2 years later, and I'd gone through all these changes in my life to make it better, and because of the pandemic basically, and I met up with this lady, and she was still as crazy as ever, maybe even more crazy. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. I can't believe I used to put up with this. But because I was a stronger, better person, I could. And I just kind of embraced the storm, as in her craziness, and just went, okay, cool, well, see you next time. So yeah, that's what the song's about. But yes, because of that, the chord progression also matches up quite well with that sense that we're not going home often. We're a place far away from home, but I felt at home even during this storm, so to speak. It's kind of abstract, but this kind of stuff can really help take your music to the next level, because say if you have a chord progression which doesn't match your lyrics, doesn't match the emotional content of your melodies, or even the vocals, the lyrics you're writing, then it's just not going to work really well. So a really good example of this, which I'd recommend checking out, is the song Mad World. The most famous version is by Gary Jules, and that's like a really mellow, somber, emotional piece, but the original is actually like an 80s kind of poppy track. The one which goes, all around me are familiar faces, and it just feels so inappropriate given it's such like a dark, sad song, but then the original instrumental is like happy and upbeat. Go check it out. It displays this point. So the emotional content of your music needs to match up with both the lyrics and the chord progression and the melodies, otherwise your music's not going to make sense. Bit of a side note, we also have this long bass here, which again, most of this has been committed to audio, so we can't really see a lot of the mixing effects, but we have this long bass as well. And if you look at this EQ here, you see it's kind of like ducking quite a lot, and that's because it was originally side chained to this stab. So here you can hear both of them at the same time with the kick, which is probably a good place to start. So the rolling bass is a lot more dominant. This is giving like a nice extra flavor to it. It's got a fifth on the oscillator as well, so it's playing a power chord, which adds a lot more harmony and texture to it. Whereas this rolling bass is just playing the root note. So that's pretty cool. So with the rest of the drums and bass sound like this. And the tom note, actually, the din 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 din, that's like accenting the rolling bass quite nicely. So your drums and bass need to complement each other very well. Anywho, there are also two pads here. We have the main arp, which sounds like this, which is basically playing 16th notes in a descending pattern, go na 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 na, which it just kind of gives the track that drive as well alongside the rolling bass line. This is adding a lot of movement, so this is what it all sounds like together. And there's also what I called the melodic arp, or the mel arp, which sounds like this. This is a bit more euphoric and a bit more upfront. The first one is kind of a bit more background and just throughout the whole track, whereas this comes in for a little bit of accents here and there, as you can see. Then we have the pads. So we have two pads. They're panned left and right to add more space to the track, but one sounds like this, a bit more lush and ethereal like waves, and there's this one, sounds a little bit more string like, so together it sounds like this. Here's the bass. Pretty awesome. So all together it sounds like this. So I'm not going to play the drums just so we can focus on the harmonies here. Which is very characteristic of producers like Cristoph, Frankie Wah, and people on Eric Prydz's label. I love this sound. It sounds awesome, and people also tend to dig it. There's not actually that many components of it. It's just, of this track, it's just drums, bass, two arps, two pads, and the vocals, and of course effects. The vocals are really sensational in this track. Maddie absolutely smashed it out of the park. Most producers will get to this stage where they get to the loop, so I got to this loop. I don't know if this is strong enough to have it as a instrumental, so that's when I arranged it into a full track and thought I'm gonna need a vocal on top of this. So that's when I reached out to Maddie. But before we do that, let's talk about the arrangement. So in terms of an arrangement, you can give away like every instrument of the loop, right? So I could give away, in theory, every single one of the drums one by one, the bass line, the pads, each of the pads, each of the arps, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 possible things I could give away over the course of the track. But that's not everything, because remember, you can add them in combinations and remove things. But then there's also the chord progression, which is something else you can give away. So in a lot of my tracks, you might notice that they start off in what's called monotonic. So round here, when the bass comes in, it's just following the root note. So this track's in B minor. And as I said, the chord progression was a 6-4-1-7. So what that means is it goes to the 6th chord, then the 4 chord, then the 1 chord, the root chord, so B minor, and then to the 7 chord, just before it repeats the cycle. But first it starts off on this B, so it will start off like this when the bass comes in. So B, And in terms of the arrangement, during this first drop, we go straight in with some vocals. It's just rolling on this root chord here.
Blurry eyes disguise the pain.
It just keeps going for 16 bars, and then during this first break here, 49 bars in, this is when we introduce the chord progression, so check it out from here. So this is a really cool tactic you can use. I will pretty much always, if I have a chord progression in my song, which by the way I pretty much always do, because I think that if you don't have a chord progression, your track's gonna lack emotion. There's only so many emotions you can convey, which is probably just really tense. And do you want everyone listening to your song to be really, really tense? Probably not. Unless you're some kind of psychopath. But point being, if you have a chord progression, you are taking people on an emotional journey. That could be a happy one, that can be a sad one, it can be anything in between. Every emotional style you can capture through music. But if you don't have a chord progression, then there's only so much you can convey with just with one chord. Not to say that it's impossible, it's just a lot harder. But anyway, you might have noticed in my tracks, I will do this. I will start off with just the monotonic chord, and then I'll give away the chord progression, either at the first drop, or usually the first break, or sometimes after the main first drop section, there'll be a big breakdown where the chord progression comes in. You can choose when you want to introduce the chord progression. You can introduce it at any time, even right at the start. But I think the more information you withhold, the more of a journey your listener can go on, you know? And I'm all for taking people on journeys. So, anywho, let's just, in terms of the vocal arrangement, so let me just get up Maddie here. So we have a lead vocal, we have a high harmony, we have a middle harmony, and some backing vocals. The harmonies are panned left and right to give more space to the vocal up front. And bear in mind that if you have two harmonies, you can have one on the left, one on the right. But if you only have one harmony, you might want to keep them right on top of each other. It all depends. But then we have a backing vocal, and basically I asked Maddie to respond to the last line or the last phrase just by saying it over again. Saying it again in a slightly different way, so check this out.
Blurry eyes disguise the pain.
Where's the backing vocal?
From then and now, it's all the same.
These harmonies here as well. He's not doing on every single note, but
it's all the same.
These are quite low in the mix. But anyway, yeah, we have a typical arrangement I'll use for vocals where we have a verse and then a chorus, and actually in this track we have a bit more of an extended chorus, so that I only give away half of it, and then during the second drop here I have the full hook. And I come back to
as the emotions fades away, sanity remains.
The pre-chorus here during this first break here. This is like a pre-chorus or a bridge, you could call it. It sounds like this.
As the emotions fades away, sanity remains. Over me, you'll never reign. Oh yeah. Turning windows into walls, races into wars. The storm is here, cannot face it. The storm is here, I'm
I don't give them it, I tease them, I edge them, as they would say. Not that I know what that means, of course. So then I hit them up with these random ad-libs, which come in. Basically what I did was I recorded her and just said, just do literally whatever you want over the microphone, and we've got all sorts of stuff. So whether that's respond, just say a line in create a different tone, or sing it however you want, do some yeah, 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 some oohs or whatever, and some alrights. So we've got stuff like this.
alright, yeah.
And
Alright, yeah.
just random stuff.
Alright, yeah, alright, yeah, alright.
And
Ooh.
that kind of stuff. I just kind of filled that with some, I found some cool things that worked here. So just like a little 2 phrases there, which make sense in terms of the song. Then filtering them in, having them really washed out so they're in the background. So people are still kind of focusing on like, oh, damn, this is a dope chord progression and everything sounds sick together. And then we have, you know, the pre-chorus again here.
As the emotions fades away, sanity.
So anyway, you know that part. And then this is what, then we give them the full hook. And then towards the end, we have her doing some other ad-libs. You can see the file name here, so these were from the ad-libs. So all in all, I wouldn't say it is the most complicated track, especially in terms of the instrumental. I think the complexity comes from the vocals, and that's what gives it the interest as well, because, you know, we're holding back the main hook, we're then throwing in little sort of bridge components to keep the interest here and there. And in terms of the lyrics as well, if you listen to them, I'd say they're pretty interesting, and especially now that you know what it's about, it's a pretty scathing review of this person. I would say rightly so, but you know, you weren't there, man. But anyway, that's the song in a nutshell. So if you're watching this after the 28th of April, then there's a link in the description for you to go listen to it now, so go hit that link. But if it's before, then there's a link, the same link in the description is a pre-save link. If you pre-save it on Spotify or Apple Music, then you'll get immediately redirected to a private SoundCloud page where you can listen to this track plus the other track from the EP called Close Your Eyes, which we'll be doing a breakdown video of that next week, but you can hear it right now before release date. Don't say I don't give you anything. Please do that. It really does help me out, and it doesn't cost you a thing, but it means the world to me, and it really helps all of us out here. So there you have it. That's my track, The Storm. It's quite similar to the Cristoph and Frankie Wah style. They are 2 of my favorite producers at the moment. So that's how you can make a track in a similar style. I hope you'd learned something from this process. Please do go support the track via the link in the description. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. The buttons are just there. It takes you 2 seconds, means the world. And if you've watched all the way through, and I hope you've had a great time, then please do that. Also, I run a music production program where we go through every single element of the track in exquisite detail and follow my workflow to create, finish and produce more label-ready, pro-sounding music from scratch. Plus, I also have a business side component as well, which helps you to build your fan base of real people who actually listen to your music, reach out to labels and start getting signed to dream labels you want to work with, plus also how to promote your music in the right way, not the wrong way, so people actually do listen to it and listen to it over and over again. So if you want to learn more about that, drop a comment saying music production program below, and I'll send you more information. And while you're at it, drop a comment below as well. Saying what you found the most useful in this video was, and if there's anything you want me to cover a video on, drop that in the comments below, because I always like suggestions for ideas and I'm here to serve you. So I'll see you in the next video. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and happy producing.